Positive Lens Podcasts. I'm your host, Scott T. Each week, we will bring you positive law enforcement news stories from across the globe, shared by departments and citizens like yourself. In our Getting to Know Your Local Leo segment, we will speak with a member of the law enforcement community about everyday life and most things non-law enforcement, as we hope to adjust your focus so you see that members of your local law enforcement community are not much different than you and me. Greetings and welcome to episode 19. In this episode's Getting to Know Your Local Leo segment, you will meet Vince Finochio, a patrolman who is a 14-year law enforcement veteran of Central Pennsylvania. We will spend time talking about his Thanksgiving family traditions, favorite times as a child, along with his entrepreneurial spirit, which saw him venture into the frozen custard business and co-founding of the Welcome to the Street podcast, where he helps keep officers informed and confident in their decision-making. Please welcome to the podcast, Patrolman from Central Pennsylvania, Vince Finochio.
Hey, Scott. Glad to be here.
I appreciate you being here as well, sir. How was your day going?
It's good. Yeah, no complaints. Had some training this week, so that's what I was doing today and tomorrow.
Excellent. And before we get into some of the details about you more specifically, you've been in law enforcement how many years now?
14.
14 years. So tell us a little bit more about yourself. 14 years, law enforcement, serving Central PA.
Yes. So I was born and raised here, Central Pennsylvania, and I did some volunteer work in a volunteer fire department when I was younger, probably 17, 18 years old when I joined there. I went to a local Catholic high school here in Central PA, and then when I graduated high school, went to Penn State University. I graduated with a 4-year degree in criminal justice, and then on to the police academy, and worked various police jobs all in this area, but some were started part-time and then slowly grew, to the point where I'm in a career position now that I'll likely stay and retire from, that type of thing.
Excellent. So you went to the Catholic school, you moved on to Penn State. Mm-hmm. So tell us, what kind of student were you in high school? Because Penn State's not the easiest school to get into, I don't believe. So what kind of student were you, and what from your high school years to college years?
Yeah, so I did okay in school. I was never. I wouldn't say that I was ever a big studier. I wasn't doing anything really above and beyond. I wouldn't say, but I also wouldn't say that it came naturally either. I mean, I'm not just naturally smart. I can't read a book and memorize a whole page or anything like that. But I did well, and then same, it translated to college as well. I think I graduated with like a 3.5 GPA or something
Nice.
like that. So it was decent. And then in the police academy is where I excelled, though. I think because of college and learning some of those study habits and reading and writing habits, in the police academy, we had several written tests along with several physical tests and practical tests, but I graduated top 3 in the police academy based off.
Congrats on that.
Thank you. Based off QPA, which is like their way of adding up the total. Yeah, so that's where it really showed, I think, is whenever I got to that point, and I was able to use some of those skills I picked up over the years to do well. And plus, when I'm interested in something, that's whenever I'm able to really lock in.
Yeah, really focused on it. A little more enjoyable when you like it.
Right.
So sounds like you knew going into college that you wanted to get into criminal justice, but what was the event? What was the TV show? What was the event? What was the life piece that you said, law enforcement?
Yes. It's funny you say TV show, because that was kind of it, I think. I don't have any specific time frame or anything that I thought of being a police officer. I do know, I still have it, actually. I have a little project from when I was in 2nd grade where I had to answer some questions. So my favorite holiday was Thanksgiving, probably because of the food. My favorite animal was a buffalo, random. And I think that was because we were learning about Indians and things like that back then.
Yeah, because there's a buffalo roaming around Pennsylvania right now.
No, but I answered it that way as a what, 6-year-old, or
Right.
7-year-old, because I think we were in the middle of the that type of lesson plan, and I liked the cowboy Indian theme when I was that age.
Of course.
And then and then when it said, what do you want to do when you grow up, I put police officer. So it's just always what I wanted to do. But I do have, vivid memories of watching the old show on TV Land, Adam 12, with my parents. Yeah.
That is the first time, I think that's the first show, or first time that show has been used as a reference for an inspiration for law enforcement to me, believe it or not.
Yeah. I mean, it's an old one, but my dad,
classic.
my dad used to watch it all the time. I'll be honest, I tried to watch it again when I got older. I don't know if it was on one of the streaming apps. I don't think it was Netflix, but it was on one of them. And I tried to watch it, and now that I'm older and it's so old, I can't relate to it at all. I think, yeah. So it's not it did not hold my attention at all in my adult life, but apparently I really liked it as a child.
I think the early shows I remember were T.J. Hooker and Chips.
Yeah.
Which,
Chips.
TJ
I did.
Yeah.
I watched Chips too. Yeah.
So you mentioned having that. You still have that. It's cool to me that you think about something. You probably had no intentions on saving it, or you might probably say about your parents, right? But you weren't
Yeah, my
intentions
mom saves
all
everything.
that. But the fact that you are in the career that you wrote about when you were in second grade, it's a pretty cool thing that you actually, as a memento to hold on to and say, I actually wrote I was going to do this, and here I am. And when you retire, ultimately, that parallel from the time then to now, that's pretty cool, though.
Right. Yeah. I like to try to hang on to some of that stuff. My mom's a big saver of all things. I mean, she's just now giving some younger children we know some of our childhood toys. And my brother and I are both in our 30s. So, but I hang on to a few of those things too that I think are cool, like news articles and stuff like that as well from old sporting events, whatever. But yeah, it's cool to look back on those things.
So if you were to look back, though, through your childhood, whether it's grade school, middle school, high school, what is your favorite childhood memories?
Yeah, so I when I think back on my childhood, I think about, I had a lot of neighborhood friends. Now, obviously, I would have been a little older during this memory because we were sort of out doing our own thing and playing sports in the yard or riding bicycles and things like that. But I used to hang out with the neighborhood kids a lot, and that was my neighborhood was just like that. It was get outside. Kids were outside doing things all the time, and fortunately there were a lot of other children that were similar in age that we could do that with. But I don't have any like vivid memory of any specific things, but when I look back on it, that's typically that, and family trips and things like that were always my favorite childhood thing.
Yeah, it's unique because I feel like nowadays you don't see the kids outside as much as you used to. The advent of the technology, they'd rather be inside playing the game than outside playing. I mean, we would play games and make up our own rules, make up our own, the end zone's over there, or the first base is over there, a shirt for first base, a cone for second base. It didn't matter what it was. We just played.
Yeah, I don't know how we survived. Like sometimes I'm like, boy, I can't believe we were having like crabapple battles, or like looking back at it now, like someone could have lost an eye, But
yeah. Or I'm sure you've probably gone over the handlebars of a bicycle at some point or another too.
Oh, well, actually, now that you just pulled that memory out of me, so I took one of those handlebars to the chest once, and I just remember having this, handlebar sized bruise there. Couldn't breathe. I remember running to my house and just kind of laying on the basement floor. And once I finally got my breath back, I was able to scream out for my mom. Because that hurts. It happened to me a couple times.
I think for me was also the road rash you've had, because you're not wearing any vest to help you those days. You're wearing your t-shirt, and you hit that road, it doesn't matter. The shirt's perfectly good, but the skin underneath is torn up. Yeah. Yeah, it is wild how the older we get, the more that stuff seems to affect us and hurt. Like, no, we don't want to. I don't want to fall and do that. No, but back then it was like you felt like Superman, like nothing could hurt you. I don't know if it was that, or we just had no concept of consequences from the injury. We're like, we're
Right.
fearless. And it's just
Exactly.
like I said, nothing can hurt you. And as we get older, we're like, man, we could really seriously get injured. We could put us in pain. Why would we try that? Because we were young. We didn't think. We just did it. Now, you mentioned Thanksgiving is one of your favorite holidays. You said primarily because of the food. So was there a special dish besides the turkey? Was there a special dish in the family, though, that's like, okay, this is the meal when mom, grandma, parents are getting together? This is what we prepare.
Yeah, so there's always the turkey, like you said, and stuffing. I'm a huge fan of stuffing. That's one of my favorites. But we always have green bean casserole, which is really good, and this corn, baked corn. So all of that stuff together, it's a very good, very good meal. We still eat most of that to this day. Even though sometimes it's less family one year, more family another year, but yeah, we're still doing it most of the time, getting the same group together and still eating those same things.
That's awesome. My wife is a green bean casserole fan. It's something she makes every single Thanksgiving. It doesn't matter what it is. She makes it.
It's so good.
Yeah, it is. It is really good. And my daughters at first, I think, weren't too keen on eating it, but they come around to it, and now they look forward to it. So.
Yeah. It's one way to make vegetables unhealthy, I guess.
Which, if it's unhealthy, means it tastes good, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Now, what about you? So those are the dishes that you have for the Thanksgiving meal. But if you're having a group of people over and you have to prepare the dish, what is your go-to dish? What's your signature?
So I like the grill. I like grilling, and when I make burgers and things like that, I do it from scratch. So I'll get the meat and then mix a bunch of things together, make the patties myself. And yeah, I mean, I like to cook other things too, but mostly when it's nice out. This time of year is kind of rough for that in Pennsylvania, but yeah, I mean, burgers, chicken, wings, anything you can cook on the grill is usually what I go to, especially for a decent sized group of people that are coming over for whatever it might be.
Yeah, and grilling with the big group, and I said, does anything speak better to burgers and hot dogs on a grill and chicken on a grill when you're having a big get together and you're grilling?
No, yeah, and it's easy, and you can feed a bunch of people with it, and yeah, it's a good time, especially to get outside and fresh air. I like doing that.
And sticking with that same piece though, I lived in the Northeast. You look forward to the springtime.
Oh yeah,
right? Because that change of season, like everything opens up. Everyone wants to be outside. Is that your favorite time of year too? Is it the transition from winter, going into spring, or what is your best time of year?
Yeah, I think either. Spring and fall. I don't really want to. I don't like the winter looming in the fall, but I do like the fall weather. That's the best type. That's the best time of year for having a little recreational fire. But yeah, definitely when the weather starts to break and it's funny because it could be 40, 50 degrees. It feels like a heat wave, especially this winter. I don't know how it was where you are, but in Pennsylvania this year, it was very cold and it started very early. Usually it takes a little longer. We've been having some pretty warm Decembers, up until this year. And this year it was very cold and it started, I don't know, I think October, November. It was and it's maintained that until about now. This is the first nice week we've had in a while.
Yeah, I have family up in both Ohio, Pennsylvania, New York area, and the Pennsylvania, Ohio side of it. It had been it started earlier, and it hadn't been amount of snow. I know recently snow came through in the last month or so, but prior to that, it was a consistent cold weather.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And for us, it's been the opposite. This year has probably been the warmest winter I've had in 10 years. And literally, yesterday morning, good old Amazon sitting there, I asked Alexa what the temperature is in the morning, and she's like, oh, it's currently 34 degrees. But then her next statement is, the high is 74 today.
Yeah. That's a big fluctuation.
It is. And I almost looked at Alexa like she was talking to me really with like a graphic or something. I'm like, 74? We're still in February. I mean, some of the worst snowstorms I've had in New Mexico have happened in February and March. And here I am getting 74 degrees yesterday for a high. So it has been a warmer winter for us than normal. We had a cold snap come through early in the month. It was feels like temperatures were single digits. And for us, people always question, it's a desert. It is. It's a high desert.
Yeah.
It's a temperature drop. It's not like some other areas, but it is definitely warmer this year.
Yeah. But you do get snow usually in the winter?
We do. So the Sandia Mountains is the range that's closest to me, and I'm on the one side of the mountain, and then there's the other, right? And so on my side, I get about 4 to 6 inches a year.
Okay.
So early on, in the very beginning of the year, we had about 4 to 6 inches of snow come through for a single snowstorm. The other side of the mountain for that same storm had 18 to 24 inches.
Oh, okay. Well,
So
that's a big difference too.
it is, yeah. The mountain is the buffer. It works well. So when you're driving to the other side, it takes about an hour drive. You have to be cognizant of where you're going because they call it the canyon. It's part of where Route 66 goes through there as well. But when you're going through, it's hollow underneath. So pending the weather, people have to be cautious because that freezes over like any bridge.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so it's but that's it. But I don't like that 4 to 6 inches is what we get here, and we could have 3-4 inches of snow in the morning, and then by afternoon it's gone.
Yeah, because apparently it gets warm there as the day goes on.
Yeah, and it's unique. And I never really understood 34-degree swings in weather. When I lived in Florida, it was hot and hotter. When I lived in New York, it was cold and colder.
Yeah.
I came out here, and it's 2 different seasons in the same day sometimes, and
Yeah.
it's good if you want to sit outside at night, or if you want to get up early and sit outside because you can get nice temperatures.
Right.
I don't get the 100+ degrees on a regular basis like Arizona does. I mean, we'll get a low 100s, but it's not bad that way, and it's not high humidity at all. So you can be outside for hours and not drip a sweat.
Mm-hmm.
Different, very different.
Yeah, that is the bad part about the East Coast is it does get very hot in the summer, which is a good thing if you have summer activities to do and things like that. Not so good when you're a police officer and you gotta say that,
Yeah, full uniform out in the street.
Yeah, it's probably way worse in Florida. I can't even imagine how hot it is, but
and it's really more the humidity in Florida, I think, that gets everybody else. So you figure it's the peninsula; it's got water everywhere.
Yeah,
so that's the tough part.
Mm-hmm.
But sticking with the food part, when I was in Pennsylvania a couple years ago, I was talking to everybody about eating, of course, because I love food, and they said you have to get Philly cheesesteak, and it seemed to be that there's no consensus of who is the original or who is the best. Do you have any idea who the best Philly cheesesteak is in your opinion, Philly?
Yeah, I mean, not really. So I'm not real close to Philadelphia. In fact, I'm much closer to Pittsburgh, and so that's not. But I've had some really good cheesesteaks either way. But funny story about that, I went to Philadelphia once, and while I was there, I went to Gino's and Pat's. Is that the two? Yeah, the two across they're right across the street from each other, and I ate both of them at the same time. Like I ate one and then the other. So yeah,
that's an appetite for the day.
Yeah. So I was like, you know what? I'm trying both. So I just ate them both. Now I think they were both good in their own way. I don't have a strong opinion one way or the other, but I just thought, I don't really have a great answer to the cheesesteak question, but I do have a cool story about it. So
okay,
yeah,
that works.
Yeah.
The thing I didn't realize as much is the debate between also what cheese you use. Like, do you use Cheese Whiz or you actually use like a melted cheese? And that was a unique part. I didn't realize that, honestly. Ordering cheesesteak in Florida, they usually gave you your peppers, onions. They gave you a cheesesteak, and it was like some kind of Swiss cheese melted on top or something.
Yeah, the whiz is good. I will admit the whiz and onions. I like the onions on it too.
Yeah, I went with the whiz. I figured that was closest to authentic, I was told, so I tried it.
Yeah.
I can't say all of us in the car finished it, but I certainly finished mine.
Yeah. Meanwhile, I'm eating too.
Yeah, that's probably the most impressive part of that story, honestly.
Yeah. I was younger then too. I feel like I could eat more when I was younger. We talked a little bit before, a little bit about the younger, skin in your knee and stuff like that. But, that includes eating, I think. For some reason, my family used to joke about it, things like Thanksgiving, stuff like that, about how much I could eat. Now I don't know. I guess it's just a metabolism thing, maybe.
Yeah, either that or the self-awareness that we start getting full. We start to slow down when we were kids. We didn't slow down.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I heard that expression, Mikey likes it, from the old days where just eating everything. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
so when you're not working though, and whether it's summers, winters, fall, spring, where can we expect to find you? What are you doing on the time you're not at work?
So usually just spending some time with my family, whatever that might include. We have a lot of good recreational things to do around here. There's parks, and when I say parks, I mean amusement, but also natural park or nature, like state parks. Is what I was looking at. Yeah, looking at it. I was like, what? I can't remember the word for this. No, state parks are places you can hike and kayak and swim and whatever you want to do. But I spend some time at the gym. I have a local gym I like to go to, and I do jiu-jitsu there, the martial art. So that's probably one of my main hobbies. And then in the summer months, I like to golf. So I play golf in the summer. I've been playing that since I was a little kid. I played on the high school golf team.
Outstanding.
Yeah, and I should be way better at it than I am, but I don't have the time to practice and play as much as I'd like to. But it's a good hobby to have and a good thing to do with friends. And my dad plays, so it's a good bonding experience for us.
Yeah, golf is that one sport that it's not like you can pick up a basketball and shoot in a hoop. If you don't practice that golf, you can't be good.
Right.
I mean, you can have a good time, but you may not be a good golfer.
Right.
That's me. I don't practice enough to be good, but I have a good time when I golf.
Yeah, that's good. That's important too. Like I said, it's mostly for me at this point about the social aspect and the bonding with my dad, and because he taught me how to play when I was a little kid, and now he's in his 70s, I'm in my 30s, we're still playing golf. So
and he's probably still just as good.
Yeah, it's
he never misses the fairway, probably.
Exactly, just right down the middle every time. Meanwhile, I'm swinging out of my shoes and bombing it way left or whatever. I hit it 400 yards further than him, but I never know where it's going to go.
Right. Yeah, that is the classic part of the game. But I want you to go back to jiu-jitsu because I believe you shared a story about your first experience and getting taken down by one of the younger individuals in the class. I heard that in one of your podcasts. I know we'll start talking about soon too. But would you like to share that for us?
Yeah. So the point I was trying to get across there is that the story is that when I went into jiu-jitsu for the first time, my jiu-jitsu coach, who's a retired police officer, he has a daughter, but she's no longer 16. That's what I was gonna. So she was 16 years old at the time, and yeah, she gave me a hard time, because in the when you get to the ground and you're in the gi, like it's just the garb that you wear for jiu-jitsu sometimes. I mean, you can do, there's gi and no gi. It's you train both ways, but point is that she was a brown belt in jiu-jitsu at the time, which anybody that trains jiu-jitsu understands what that means. And so I was trying to drive the point home that police officers that are reasonably sized men or women need to get themselves into those gyms and get trained, because it doesn't really matter how strong you are. It does to a degree, but not if I go and I grapple with somebody who's more advanced in jiu-jitsu than I am, and we're the same strength, or maybe I'm even slightly stronger, I'm probably still going to lose that match.
Because of the techniques they have.
Because of the techniques and the way that you can just control your own body and somebody else's. So you just have a lot more ability to control a situation. And that's why it relates to law enforcement, because if you can keep somebody in a controlled position for a period of time, then you might not have to escalate the force, and it might not get to the point that it gets more dangerous for you, or maybe they can't, if you can control their arms, they can't get a weapon, things like that.
Would you like to expand, though, on the size difference between you at the time going in and the 16-year-old, to give an illustration to the listeners of?
Yeah, I assume you saw the picture.
I did.
Yeah. So she was probably, I was probably 6'1", like 190 pounds or 200 pounds. I'm heavier now than I was then.
We are. As the number goes up in age, our weight follows it.
Yeah. And then she was 16. I don't know. I don't even know how tall she would have been. It was maybe like 5'7", like 120. you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, she was strong. So she actually fought MMA after that as she got older. So from 18 to 20 some years old, she actually fought in women's MMA.
That's pretty classic. That's awesome.
Yeah. So she was always a beast. Like, she was a strong girl for her age, and but no, I'm not. But yeah, she was. The point, like I said, of that is the size discrepancy didn't really matter too much when you have no idea what you're doing. You get first. Anybody that goes into their first jiu-jitsu class would understand how you think that you can. That you would have some control over a situation, but then you can just so easily be put into a bad spot, or you give up a bad or a good position, things like that.
And and you're trained to do, right? When you're learning jiu-jitsu, you're learning to recognize those deficiencies in the other person, the areas that you can take advantage of to get them under your control.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Part of it is it's confidence in your ability. So as you continue to train, you build confidence, but you also learn your limitations. So, I know just from going to this class every couple of days that there's people in there that are better than me at it, bigger than me, stronger than me, or just better at jiu-jitsu, or both. And so I know that, I might encounter somebody on an incident that's like that. I don't know if people train or not, I don't know, or even just being a big person, could make a difference. So, so yeah, I know that I might not want to put myself into that spot because I might not be able to get back out of it. So yeah, I think there's a confidence building, but also you also learn real quick what your limitations are.
Excellent. I appreciate you sharing the story. Like I said, when I heard the story originally and I saw the pictures, I was like, that's phenomenal. And it's a great example for the importance of jiu-jitsu in law enforcement, or any other technique that has the grappling ability to be on the ground and how to navigate it.
Yeah,
so,
for
cool.
sure.
So, in law enforcement, you go through a lot of different things, right? There's challenges that you face in your job, but then you also have the challenge that you face in life. Everybody faces different obstacles, personally as well as professionally. Can you tell us about a time you've actually had face a personal challenge, and you had to figure out how to balance that between showing up, performing in your role where you're expected to perform every day as a police officer, but navigating that path and that challenge, like there's some personal challenge you may have gone through?
Yeah. So, I mean, I was fortunate, or I am fortunate, that I've always sort of had a pretty good personal life, for the most part. I mean, I had a good upbringing. I've always sort of had good luck, I guess, or but, I definitely sympathize with people who don't have the same experience or that I did. But everybody does go through their challenges. So I went through a divorce when I was about 5 years into my career. Now, we met in college. We were young, got married, and then things just didn't work out. It was no animosity or anything on either end. Like, whenever the time came to make the decision, it was very mutual and stuff like that. But I mean, heck, even that was, I guess, 12 years ago now, you know what I mean? But yeah, about 4 or 5 years into my career, that happened. And that's tough. Even if it was mutual, it was a very tough situation. Yeah. And honestly, my job was probably a big part of the problem, because I was working weird shifts and not sleeping great and stuff like that. So I'm sure it didn't help.
Right. Yeah. There may be a natural growing apart, but the job also contributed to it, probably.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Because, well, it's easy to naturally grow apart when you see each other 2 days a week, because you work completely opposite shifts and stuff like that.
You're more roommates than husband and wife.
It's not going to help. It's not going to help you stay. What you said about growing apart, it's certainly not going to help you not grow apart, to not see each other and never have the time to put the effort in and things like that. But, and also at 23 years old or whatever, it's hard to even recognize those problems. And, what are you supposed to do? So yeah, that was one challenge. But, and then as I moved forward with that, obviously, like, new relationships are always challenging.
Also, you're probably playing in the back of your mind, going to a new relationship. How do I start a new relationship and not do the same things I did in the first one?
Yeah. Well, and honestly, like let's say you go on a date on a Thursday, and it went well, and you're like, I kind of want to see this person again. How's next Thursday? Because that's my next day off. You know what I mean? So yeah, you don't have a lot of time to. So it is a challenge when you work shift work and you don't have everybody else in the world's working 8 p.m. or 8 to 4 or whatever, and I'm working 4 to midnight or worse. So
and it's also just setting that next date, but the time frame also could be a challenge. It's not just a week later, but like you said, you're working 4 o'clock to midnight. Well, when's your date? 2 in the afternoon?
Yeah. Well, that's what I mean. Or else you just wait for your next day off. So yeah. So that's the challenge. But yeah, I mean, I've overcome all of those challenges as time went on, and there's ways to work around, your shift work and things like that. Plus, as you put more time in, eventually you get better days off and, better schedules and things like that. But
yeah, I never thought about that part though, because you tell someone you're interested in seeing them again, but you're not waiting till a week to see them. It's almost like in that first date, you're like, listen, I got to set some expectations. My role is I'm in law enforcement. So if I tell you I want to see you next week, it's because I don't have another day to see you. You literally have to set the expectation, or they think you're blowing them off. If they say, hey, you want to hang out? How's next week work? And that's the interest. I've never once thought about how that would actually impact your relationship of the dating cycle. Because we know the relationships, the couple part of it, it's a challenge within law enforcement, but the dating part, never once thought about that piece of it.
Yeah, well, once you find somebody, and the other aspect of that too is that some people just understand. Like, you might just find somebody that doesn't need as much attention or time together or whatever. Right, there's different relationships have different needs, or different people have different needs. So that's another way to overcome it, is that you're up front with your schedule at the beginning. And here's the other real challenge too. Let's say you work night shift, which I've done periodically over my career. You're typically not in a great mood all the time, because you wake up at a weird time of day. Everybody else has been awake for 8 hours. You've been sleeping for 8 hours. It'd be kind of like if you had to interact with the most energetic person at 6 a.m. for you, 6 a.m. your time, and you just have someone talking your ear off, and you're like, can I just have my coffee? Like,
That's true.
Yeah. So it's just another way to look at it, but it's a challenge. So, and I honestly, this conversation makes me think back on, or almost feel for some of the people going through it now. It's like, maybe there are people still experiencing that, because I'm not. I'm good now, but
in the parallel, because we talk about in this podcast that the similarities between what law enforcement goes through in their personal lives as well as individuals. There's many businesses that are open 24 hours, and if somebody works the graveyard shift, they work a swing shift, whatever it might be. So even those individuals, even though the profession is very different, and what they experience in the profession, the sleep patterns, regardless of what profession, can be thrown off. Now, again, what you see in your day could impact your sleep patterns, of course, too. But someone working overnight at a gas station, someone working overnight in a warehouse, someone over in any store, that sleep cycle and that relationship piece of it, it could make a difference for anyone. Right? But, wow.
Yeah.
Like I never once put the dating perspective into that piece, so I appreciate you bringing that to my attention today.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned, though, you've overcome them, obviously, the pieces of it, and you've grown from there. But can you go back and think about, an event that did shape your life, and if it was that or something else that you would go back and say to yourself when you were 16 years old, listen, Vince, this is what you need to remember. This is what you need to do.
Yeah, that's a tough one, because you think back into your past like that, and you're like, I like where I'm at now, right? So what if I would have changed some small thing? It might have made me not face as many problems, or I wouldn't have had to go through this one or two hardships, whatever it might be. But that probably would have changed the course of my life, and then I might not be in the situation I'm in now. So it's always a challenge to think about that. Because, like, for example, what if I wouldn't have left, my old position at my old job, or what if I wouldn't have sold that house and moved to a different house, or relationship stuff. Right. All of those things. Like, what if I wouldn't have dated that one crazy girl? You know what I mean? but if you don't,
just one.
Well, hey, maybe it was me. I don't know. But if I didn't do those things, though, then I might not be where I am today. And I honestly could say that I don't know that I would change anything about my current situation. So that's a tough thing to say, but maybe just give myself a couple pieces of advice or some warnings or something like that. But I don't have anything specific, really.
Yeah, and it's not about changing things, right? It might just be like you said, an advice. Hey, you're going to encounter some obstacles along the way. Overcome them. Almost like the pep talk to how to overcome something comes before you.
Yeah.
But the fact that you like where you are today, you're at peace where you are today. It can't be any better than that, right? That's a great feeling.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So moving forward, so you're in law enforcement, but at the same time, you've ventured into the business world. You've taken a step to go and take the entrepreneur spirit. Tell us a little bit more about how this came about. If you'd like to share with us what you're actually doing in that scope of business and what you like most about it.
Yeah. So I do a couple things. So first and foremost, about 2 years ago, I bought a partner and I purchased a frozen custard ice cream business. Now to circle back, I was sort of looking for something to do in that capacity, some business opportunity, or what could I open, what could I purchase, just something on the side that could add to my income, or maybe be a good investment opportunity or whatever. Right. Well, then what ended up happening was I worked at this same franchise when I was like 16 years old.
Oh, wow.
So from 16 to I think I was 20 or 21 when I left, after right around the time that I would have been just about done with college, things like that.
Yeah.
I left that ice cream shop that I was at when I was younger. Now, when I was in college, I had talked to like the franchise about purchasing my own, which if I would have been able to do that back then, there were all kinds of opportunities because there weren't a whole lot of them around.
Okay.
But when you're in college, that a loan and all that stuff sounds astronomical. It sounds like a lot more money than it sounds now. And also you don't have any credit. You don't have any, credibility in the space. I can't even.
You had 5 years of experience in it, but that's all you could bring to the table.
Yeah, exactly. I can't even fluff a business plan, at that point. So anyway, I sort of gave up on that idea and went on with my life. Well, fast forward to now, or 2 years ago, I heard of one of those locations going up for sale. And I reached out to the owner and we talked, and I ended up purchasing it with a business partner who I worked with at the original store when we've been friends since then, since we were 16 years old. So I have that, and as a part of that, I don't do a lot day to day. I manage the staff a little bit. I do some inventory and ordering and stuff, but it doesn't take a whole lot of my time. I have a great staff that does a lot of the work as far as just the day-to-day operations. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then so that's the business part of what I'm doing now.
Okay. So let me ask you. I know you said there was a couple different things before we get to the other one. For those who are aspiring to try to balance their full-time work, yours is in law enforcement, whether it's another officer or another individual, what would be an advice that you've learned in this journey over the last 2 years of how to balance starting a business and maintaining your current full-time position?
Yeah, you definitely have to find a business that you don't have to be at every day. So because a lot of them you can't, right? So if you want to start a just name your business, I guess, a coffee shop or whatever, from scratch, and you want to be successful and not have it go under in your first year, you're probably going to have to be there every day. You know, I found one that was an established business that had been there for over a decade, and you know, it was already staffed. The old owner had more than one location, so they were already relatively absentee, like, you know, maybe 1 or 2 days a week they would. So I kind of knew that it could already run without an owner working in the store full time. So that's one piece of advice. Make sure you purchase the right business and actually have a good idea of what that looks like before you do it, because when things get stressful, and maybe you don't have enough staff, or the payroll's getting too high, and you're a new business, you can't afford to make those payments, that could be really difficult. So So definitely pick the right thing. I got lucky with the food retail, because I don't think it would have worked if it was anything else. I mean, really, I know a lot of business owners now that are in that space, and it's challenging. So now, obviously, there's internet-based businesses now, and there's all kinds of other things that somebody could do. So they should be able to kind of figure out beforehand how much time it's going to take for them. But before you bite off more than you can chew and take out a big loan and stuff like that, make sure that you make sure the business is going to be successful without you being present all the time, or be willing to leave your job if you have to.
Yeah. And you mentioned a couple of different things in there. In today's world, you hear a lot of people talking about they do 4 hours a week running their business, or an hour every night on whatever online business they're running. And some are successful, some are not. But you're talking brick and mortar, and it doesn't work for some individuals starting, like you said, a coffee shop. But with the business you're in, I think the benefit is that you've learned from going through it is, like I said, there was a staff. You just had to keep that staff happy, keep the operation going. And I'm simplifying it, obviously, but keep the operation going, keep everything moving forward. And because it had existing clientele, it had existing reputation, it made it a tad bit easier. I'm not say easy, I say easier.
Right, sure. Yeah, I mean, it obviously still took work, especially the first 6 months or so. And I was fortunate because I was working second shift at the time. So I had pretty much during the day, I had all day to do some things if I needed to do them, before work, before my real job. And then it also didn't take away from family time, because families at school or work or wherever during the day.
Hours. Right.
Yeah. So I was basically alone during the day anyway, and then work. So that worked out well for me. And then by the time my schedule had changed and I really don't have as much time to dedicate to it anymore, by then I had already had things set up that I needed to have set up. So I spend less time per week on the business than I did when I first started it, or first bought it. But I still spend a little bit of time. I mean, I'm still involved with all the staff if they have questions or concerns, or I do some scheduling and I do some ordering and things like that. So, but it's not an overabundance of work to the point where I don't have the time in a week to do it.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I guess you said you were 16 when you were there, so maybe advice to the 16-year-old Vince would have been, stay the course. You're going to own this place someday.
Yeah. Or just you'll be fine. Just buy one,
Now, you mentioned you have another business venture. Is that another one you'd like to share with us?
Yeah. So then I liked the business side of things, and I wasn't sure. Law enforcement, we talk about this on my show sometimes, but law enforcement has hills and valleys. I'm sure every job does. I'm sure you've experienced it. But I don't know that because I've never worked outside of law enforcement. So when I bought the business, I liked the business. I really enjoyed doing it. And I was like, boy, it'd be nice if this made me enough income that I could do this full time, or maybe I'll look at other business ventures because maybe this is a new idea for me. Right. I can transition out of law enforcement, start doing this. So I looked into a bunch of different things, and I was always talking to talking to different people about different businesses and different career options. And to your point, when you said about the people that spend an hour an evening on their business or whatever, most of them are full of crap.
Right.
So if you find influencers and stuff on Instagram that say that they have a 5 to 9 after a 9 to 5 and whatever, like, yeah, I don't know. There are some people that are probably pretty successful doing that. And then there's other people that are really successful selling you advice on how you can be successful.
Right. They're making the money off of that
off of you,
exactly.
not off of what they're doing. Yeah. So it's like a giant internet-based pyramid scheme or something. I don't even know how to explain it. But some of those people are legit, and I'll explain that in a second too. So I was part of a Facebook group it's called Off Duty Entrepreneur, and it was a group for police officers or any first responder, I think, who wanted to transition to business ownership or just do something on the side or whatever they wanted to do. And that's where I met Devontae Richardson, who had a police related newsletter called Welcome to the Street, which is police news, case law updates, training tips, and it's all in this it's a short, easy to read 5-minute weekly briefing that you get in your email. It's completely free. And I liked his business model. I liked the name. I liked the branding and everything. And I'm like, that's when I kind of thought to myself, well, wait a minute. I have this skill set, which is law enforcement. I like business. So why don't I lean on law enforcement a little bit harder and try to be a little bit more involved in that, and maybe do something on the training side of law enforcement or the news and information spreading side kind of thing. Right. So I jumped in with him, and now we run the newsletter, the Welcome to the Street newsletter, and we have a Welcome to the Street podcast. And basically that's just doing exactly what you and I are doing, which is having conversations with cool people that are either cops or retired cops, or they train cops from all around the country. And honestly, it kind of refreshed my interest in law enforcement, because I'm constantly learning about the stuff. I'm constantly talking to people, expanding my skills, expanding my knowledge, while at the same time using the knowledge and skills that I already had acquired from the last 14 years to spread that to other people, just to try to make the profession better overall. So I kind of took what I thought I was already good at, and then my interest in business, and I'm like, hey, I'm just going to do this for a little while, see how it goes. I want to lean on my law enforcement experience to try to create something else.
Yeah, that's right now. What's cool about it too is you mentioned it's almost like reinvigorated your career, because
right.
With every profession we go through cycles, right? Not every day is the high and every day is the low, but the fact that you're now bringing a whole new element to officers throughout the country. It
right.
now giving you another purpose beyond what you went into law enforcement for. Because I'm sure when you entered law enforcement, it wasn't to help other officers. It was to protect and serve in the role you're doing. But now
right.
you're actually helping them. So to talk a little bit more about it, because it is a great podcast. Like I said, Welcome to the Street. There are departments around the country. Some have thousands, some have not single digits, but lower numbers of populations. And you talked about case law, talked about different pieces to help them. Can you tell us a little bit more about how the podcast is helping current officers, how they can access it, and how it's helping them on a weekly basis, and that communication? Because I think the communication is key. If it's the morning briefing, if it's about updates that are happening on a weekly basis, or things that are coming out that are new, that are maybe not getting into their hands in their own department. How are you guys entering that space how are you filling that void and sharing that with them?
Yeah, so what we do is we do all the research, like it, it takes a little bit of time throughout the week, and we put in between the two of us, we put together all of that information onto the newsletter, which anyone can subscribe to at welcometothestreet.com. It's completely free. It comes out Monday mornings. And so every Monday morning you get an email, and then it covers certain topics. Now, typically it's the news that happened that week, which there's a ton of police news, but we try to cover the ones that are interesting stories, or stories that could really affect your job or the way that you police, whether that's a change in the law or a lawsuit that came down, or a department. Like the story we covered last week was about that Alabama police department that's being disbanded because of all the corruption.
Yeah.
So
I think it was the grand jury recommended the disbanding of it, correct?
That's what they recommended. What they end up doing with it, I'm not sure, but yeah. So that we talked about that story. We talked about the active shooter at the hospital in York, Pennsylvania. Then we go over if there's any line of duty deaths for the week. We talk about those because, mostly, to honor those officers, but also to, if there is anything to talk about as far as a learning experience or a safety issue, we can bring that up at that time. Because a lot of officers, there's a lot of medically related deaths on duty. So we talk about that, and sometimes we throw in like a fitness or wellness tip, nutrition tip, something like that. Depends on where we're at and what information we come up with. And then we do a scenario where we explain an incident that a law enforcement officer could easily come in contact with, like a search and seizure issue or a use of force issue or whatever. Usually they're either made up completely or they're just based off some sort of case law that we found. And then we reference the case law. So after they answer a poll question. So like, hey, what would you do in this scenario? A, B, C, D. And then at the end of the newsletter, we talk about which answer is correct and why.
So how did you now transition that so they can get that in their email Monday mornings? Mm-hmm. And then the podcast complements it. So tell us more how the podcast actually, though, takes those pieces to it, because you've had guests on the show, like you said.
Right.
And you're talking about those stories, but you also bring in other elements into it, I think, that help people have, two different listening platforms. They can read it, they can listen to it, but it seems like you actually go further with the podcast and actually able to give more detail on the case law that's referenced.
Yeah, so we don't just, we started the podcast then. The newsletter's been around for a little while. We started the podcast, I think we're on episode 7, or it'll be 8 this week. So 8 weeks of the podcast. And what we do is we go over the newsletter that's coming out. So the newsletter comes out on Mondays, the podcast comes out on Tuesdays. So we go over the newsletter that came out the day before. And we don't just read it verbatim, so it's not just an audio version of the newsletter. But that was the goal. So the goal is what if people don't want to read their email? Like, what if they just would like to listen to what we have to say? Right. So we did last week, just as an example, we did a policy that the LAPD has called Command and Control, and it's a policy specifically for supervisors. So in the newsletter, we had a bunch of information on this policy and how it relates to supervision and how it can, if you don't do things correctly, how it can get you in trouble with your job and things like that. We referenced an officer-involved shooting from 2023 that highlighted that policy. Okay. And then we had Marlon Mariachi. He's the IA guy on Instagram and YouTube. He was a LAPD officer for 24 years and an IA investigator for 12 of those years. So he came on and we talked at length about that policy and about how it related to that case, and what the officers could have done differently to avoid violating that policy. So so that was just an example, but we do that every week with a different guest and a different piece of information in the newsletter.
And then I think it's great because in my eyes, if you have the briefing in the morning, great, but the briefing's not covering everything you're talking about. And if they're driving around or they're on the beat, you can listen to this anywhere. So right. The 5-minute read and the episode, it also cements within the newsletter, right? And some people here think differently. You mentioned early on about reading a book, not memorizing the page. But sometimes when you hear it, it sinks in, right? And right. Now an officer hearing those pieces of it after previously read it, it gives them better awareness, keeps them more on their toes. Like I said, you're making the officers better by having that. So I think it's phenomenal. I think it's a great idea, especially, I said, to enhance communication. So,
yeah.
So you mentioned it's released on Tuesdays.
Mm-hmm.
If then individuals want to download and listen, where should they go?
Yeah, so we're on all the anywhere you listen to podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcast, but the easiest way to find us is welcometothe street.com and then you click on podcast, and then you can just, whichever link you want to listen to it on, it'll take you directly to that service. So it'll give you the link for Spotify, for YouTube, for Apple Podcasts, or if you're on Spotify right now, just type in Welcome to the Street and you'll find it. Yeah.
It's a good intro too. I like the beginning of the episodes.
Yeah, Devontae recorded that. He does a great job with it. And then he recorded the extra. No, I don't know what you said. Outro, yeah. So he recorded that too. Yeah, they're both really good. So I think for being very new at podcasting and stuff, I think we've done a pretty good job so far. Not to toot my own horn, but yeah, it's definitely a cool thing, and honestly, it's a great networking opportunity too, because I've met so many cool people, officers or former officers from all across the country now that I never would have met if I hadn't started doing this. And I just think we have monthly roll call briefings as well. So if that is a paid thing though. So I told you the newsletter is free, but we have a premium. It's $10 a month. It's and that gets you access to our monthly roll call briefings, where we have these training sessions where we bring on an expert and we talk about different things. So it's a little bit different than the podcast. We had Lady Law Shield, who's an attorney who handles whistleblower cases and things like that.
A few weeks ago she was on, right? Or a few weeks ago you had her.
Yeah, it was on the webinar type training. Yeah, on the roll call briefing is what we call it, just because it's a cool name. But
I was trying to think when a few weeks ago I remember you had the episode, but it wasn't an episode as much as it was, like I said, the webinar.
Yep. Yeah. So and that's live. So you click the link, you get on Zoom, you attend it live. And then that's a cool place for all of us to talk. And then occasionally, like, we'll send out a meet and greet. So we get on and we just talk to people. I met a police chief from Kentucky, and, all kinds of cool people doing that too. So, we do monthly giveaways for premium subscribers, and we have some other ideas in the works here of other things that we're going to start to offer. But for now, we do those trainings. So the first one was Cop to Corporate, where we had a guy come on to explain how to get your LinkedIn and your resume and everything squared away so that you could transition from law enforcement to something else if you so chose to do that. Yeah, so it's a good time, and actually some really valuable training for, but it's like done in an interactive way. So it's not like just sitting at your computer watching Vince go through slides or something like that. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So it's different. It's cool. And that's why I like it, because it's not like your run of the mill, like, death by PowerPoint trainings.
Yeah. And maybe at some point in the future, we can get the departments to actually somehow recognize the trainings and have that count towards these training hours you have to do.
Yeah, possibly. We're working on some things right now that we're hoping that the problem is that different departments do things different ways. But I'm in Pennsylvania. He's in Ohio. We have all these different states have different requirements and stuff like that. So most of the time, when you have that happen, we'd have to figure out what states and go to each one. And yes, it's not like a big national thing or anything like that, but yeah.
Concept is great. It really is. But here's the thing. People may want to be on the show. How can they get in contact with you, Devontae, and if they want to be a guest on the show, if they want to be a contributor to the show? I know you mentioned the website. Is that the best place for someone who's interested in connecting for that purpose also?
Yeah, so both of our emails are at the bottom of the website under authors, and it's welcometothe street.com, or we're both on LinkedIn, we're both on Instagram, and then we have our pages too. So Welcome to the Street on Instagram and Welcome to the Street on Facebook as well. But yeah, to get into touch with us individually, Devontae Richardson, Vince Finochio, and then welcometothe street.com.
Excellent. I appreciate you sharing. Like I said, I do think it's a great thing. It's educating law enforcement. It's making them better. And it's not to say they weren't good before, right? You're just making everyone else get better. And you're doing it through a platform that's phenomenal. Like I said, the newsletter, it's been, like I said, a couple of years. The podcast is complementing it. And then you have, like I said, the monthly subscriber piece. So, and you said $10 a month for the subscriber. So it's a small investment in dollars to get valuable information for training.
Right.
And, you know, with some states making, I can't drew a blank on the term, where officers are being liable, possibly can be sued personally. I can't think of it. Like I said, I'm drawing a blank on the term.
And they're ending, qualified immunity.
Thank you. Yeah. I drew a blank on it. But, you know, with that change also happening, it's even more important that, you know, the messages that you're delivering, especially the guests that are in the subscriber piece, is really letting people stay on top of things and keep themselves from having any of those issues arise. So.
Yep. Yeah. Yep. And that's how I view Welcome to this. I always say, like, prepared and as informed as confident. So, you know, you take a little bit of time out of your week, a little bit of money, maybe, if you want to do the premium, read the newsletter, listen to the podcast. And we're not the only police podcast. There's a bunch of ways you can learn this stuff. But you know, we think that when you come to us, you get like a real genuine, personal look from the two of us, because we have these meet and greets and roll calls and things like that. But also it's just such a concise, easy thing to read. You're not getting a 15-page legal brief. It's just a quick, but you get all the same information. So, but yeah, if you just take that little bit of time to prepare by subscribing to the newsletter, getting some training on your own time through us and through whoever else you can get it from, because I think that you should do as much as you possibly can, informed, and then that'll make you confident so that you're making the right decisions on the street. If you know the law and you know the case law, there's no reason not to be confident, and then you don't need to worry so much about lawsuits and arrests and things of that nature if you're doing the right thing and you're doing it in a confident, informed way.
Phenomenal. Outstanding. Yeah. You know, thinking of you're serving the public, though. You know, you're out in the street every day. They're bringing these new skills with them. You know, and there's a lot of communication going out there about how to build relationships with the community. And there's some, you know, things about free barbecues and free giveaways and all that. And then there's also the conversations about make sure the culture in the department is actually the right culture, because if the culture is good, then the officers are going out and they'll serve a certain way. For you, though, what do you think is the best way to build that relationship from the law enforcement to the community?
Well, you're starting to do a pretty cool thing here too. Like, we're talking about my podcast a lot, but what you do is great. You know, you're getting guys on here to talk to you about their real life, you know, and so that kind of humanizes the badge a little bit, so to speak. But yeah, I think that officers, like I always say this to new hires whenever I'm doing field training, get out of your car, talk to people. You know who your business owners are. You know, talk to your employees at your gas stations that we're talking about. So even if you're on midnight shift and you can't meet the business owner or whatever, go into the store and meet the night shift workers. Just say it. But yeah, I think knowing the officers on a more personal level like that is old
school, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's how they used to do it, with the walking the beat kind of thing.
Right.
I'm not suggesting that anybody, you know, walks
the sidewalk.
Yeah, 5 miles a day or anything. But yeah, just get into your businesses and meet people and know. And honestly, it helps with police work too, because you kind of know what's supposed to be there and what's not, and you know who to call if you have a problem. You know, I call the property management people or the business owners of places all the time, just because I know them personally now at this point.
Yeah. You know, and not just that, but it gives them a comfort level of calling you. So when they now know, oh, Vince is coming here, you know, a couple of times over the last month, I have an issue happening, I know I can call Vince. You know, there's a comfort level there. And like I said, humanizing the law enforcement role. Still the respect is there, but humanizing the communication piece of it, making them feel comfortable.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. It goes both ways. If they need something from you, you answer their law enforcement related question or whatever it might be. And then when you need them, they'll be there whenever you have to give them a call. That's the way I look at it.
Perfect. So, you mentioned that there was a time where you're like, hey, maybe this business could be replacement of what I'm doing in law enforcement. And then, you went to the next phase and you added the new business venture with Welcome to the Street. But if you had to do it over again, would we still be talking to Patrolman Vince Finochio, or would we be talking to the businessman?
If I had the opportunity when I was younger, you mean?
Yes, if you had to do it all over again, would you still pursue the career in law enforcement?
Oh, yeah, I think so. Yeah. I had too much of I met way too many good people and had a great experience in law enforcement. And, I don't know. I think I'm just like kind of wired that way. I've wanted to do it forever. I have a good knack for most of it. And I think that there's just a part of me that would definitely miss it if I left, and would have regretted it if I didn't try it. So, yeah, I'm glad.
All right. So, listeners out there every day are going through the same challenges when it comes to safety. They see stuff on the news, they see the good, they see the bad, and we always like to leave them with a tip. What is the tip for you today for individuals who are in the communities that they should be practicing to stay safe?
Well, I think the biggest one is like just get your face out of your cell phone. And I'm not even talking about just driving. I'm talking about which is obviously dangerous, but even just walking. So you get out of your car, you're walking into the grocery store, and you're like, the whole way into the store, you cross the street. I think that a lot of the other tips that I could give would be unnecessary if people just had a little bit more situational awareness to begin with. Pay attention to your surroundings, have some situational awareness, and don't be just facing the phone all the time, because that's when people get targeted. People. That's when someone's going to snatch your purse or worse. So just pay attention. Easy
target, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you got to pay attention to what's going on around you. And I will say that most people aren't wired that way, and most people just want to live their lives. And honestly, that's part of bridging that gap too, is like, that's what law enforcement's here for, is that you don't have to be scared all the time, and you don't have to take these extra steps. It's nice to, and you should, because it is a dangerous world, but I would like to be a part of making it more comfortable for the average person to just be able to live their life without fear and without worried about that kind of thing so much.
Yeah, I like to say that law enforcement helps take care of you, so you can actually enjoy time with your family. But and you guys actually sacrifice time with your own family, so we don't have to worry about our own, right? And when we're out on the street, you're protecting us already. And that would be the comforting thought, to know that Officer Finochio is actually here helping me. And the rest of all the patrolmen. So I appreciate you going through all this with us today. It's been great talking to you. I loved some of the stories you shared. For those who, like I said, haven't tuned in, they can certainly welcome to street.com for your podcast, for the newsletter, for the premium membership. Is all there. So for you though, great to have you on here for 14 years of law enforcement. I'm sure, like I said, more years to come. And I appreciate you taking the time to be on the Getting to Know Your Local Leo segment of the Your Positive Lens podcast. And we look forward to further communication with you in the future too.
Yeah, I really appreciate you having me on, and I really appreciate what you're doing here. And thanks again. And of course, we'll stay in touch, and hopefully we'll do it again someday.
Sounds good, sir. I appreciate it.
All right, thanks.
All right, take care now. If you liked this episode, follow us on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcast. Provide us your feedback in the comments and leave us a rating or review. We truly appreciate your opinion. And then follow us on LinkedIn or Facebook to get all the latest updates. Remember, you can always find places that will share negative law enforcement news stories. But here at Your Positive Lens, you will only find your positive law enforcement news stories. Once again, I'm your host, Scott T. Thanks for listening, and we'll capture you on the next Your Positive Lens.